morning, everybody. We've been doing some work on the magic faraway tree this week, and I thought I'd read you, or start to read you, the Enchanted Wood by Enid Blyton, and this is the first story from the magical faraway tree. And this is where we first find out about the magic wood. Chapter 1. How they found the magic wood. There were once 3 children, Joe, Beth and Franny. All their lives they'd lived in a town, but now their father had a job in the country, so they all had to move as soon as they possibly could. "What fun to be in the country," said Joe. "I shall learn about animals and birds, and I shall pick as many flowers as I want to," said Beth. "And I shall have a garden of my own," said Franny. When the day came for the move, all the children were excited. A small van came to their door. 2 men helped their father and mother to pile everything into it. When it was full, the van drove away, and the children put on their coats and hats to go with their mother to catch a train at the station. "Now we're off," cried Joe. "The country," sang Beth. "We might see fairies there," said Franny. The train whistled and chuffed out of the station. The children pressed their noses to the window and watched the dirty houses and the chimneys race by. How they hated the town! How lovely it would be to be in the clean country, with flowers growing everywhere, birds singing in the hedges. "We might even have adventures in the country," said Joe. "There'll be streams and hillsides, big fields and dark woods. Oh, it will be lovely." "You won't have any more adventures in the country than you will have in the town," said their father. "I'm sure you will find it very dull." But that's where he was quite wrong. My goodness, the things that happened to those children. They arrived at last at the tiny station where they were to get out. A sleepy-looking porter put their 2 bags onto a trolley, and he said he would bring them along later. And off they all went, down the winding country lane, chattering loudly. "I wonder if we've got a garden," said Franny. But before they reached their new home, they were tired out. Their cottage was 5 miles from the station, and as their children's father could not afford to do anything but walk there, it seemed a very long way. There was no bus to take them, so the tired children dragged their feet along, wishing for a glass of warm milk and a cosy bed. At last they got there, and dear me, it was worth it. For the cottage was sweet. Roses hung around the walls, red, white and pink, and the honeysuckle was all around the front door. It was lovely. The van was at the door, and the 2 men were moving all the furniture into the little house. Father helped whilst Mother went to light the kitchen stove to make them all a hot drink. They were so tired that they could do nothing but drink hot milk, eat some toast, and tumble into their roughly made beds. Joe looked out of the window, but he was too sleepy to see anything properly. In 1 minute the 2 girls in their small room were asleep, and Joe too, in his even tinier room. What fun it was to wake up in the morning and see the sun shining in at strange windows. It didn't take Joe, Beth and Franny long to dress. Then they were out in the little garden, running through the grass that had grown so long, and smelling the roses that grew all around. Mother had cooked eggs for them, and they ate their breakfast hungrily. "It's lovely to be in the country," said Joe, looking out of the window to the faraway hills. "We can grow vegetables in the garden," said Beth. "And there'll be glorious walks all around," said Franny. That day, everyone helped to get the little house straight and tidy. Father was going to work the next day. Mother hoped there'd be someone to give her some washing to do so she could make enough money to buy a few hens. That would be lovely. I shall collect the eggs each morning and evening, said Franny happily. Let's go out and see what the country round about is like, said Joe. Can you spare us for an hour, Mother? Yes, run along, said Mother. So off the three children went, out of the tiny white front gate and into the lane. They explored all around. They ran across the field where pink clover was full of bees. They paddled in a small brown stream that chattered away to itself under the willow trees in the sunshine. And then, suddenly, they came to a wood. It was not far from their cottage at the back. It looked quite an ordinary wood, except that the trees were a darker green than usual. A narrow ditch separated the wood from the overgrown lane. A wood, said Beth in delight. We should be able to have picnics here. It's a rather mysterious sort of wood, said Joe thoughtfully. Don't you think, Beth? Well, the trees are rather thick, but they seem about the same as any others, said Beth. They don't quite, said Franny. The noise the leaves makes is different. Listen. They listened, and Franny was right. The leaves of the trees in the wood did not rustle in quite the same way as other trees nearby did. It's almost as if they are talking to each other, said Beth, whispering secrets, real secrets that we just can't understand. It's a magic wood, said Franny suddenly. Nobody said anything. They stood and listened. Whisher, 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 said the trees in the wood, and bent towards one another in a friendly way. There might be fairy folk in there, said Beth. Shall we jump over the ditch and go in? No, said Joe. We might get lost. Let's find our way around before we go into big woods like this. Joe, Beth, Franny! Suddenly came their mother's voice from the cottage not far off. It's time for lunch! Time for lunch! The children felt hungry all at once. They forgot the strange wood and ran back to their new home. Mother had new bread baked with strawberry jam for them, and they ate a whole loaf between them. Father came in as they were finishing. He'd been shopping for Mother in the village 3 miles away, and he was tired and hungry. We've been exploring everywhere, Father, said Beth, pouring him out a big cup of tea. We found a lovely wood, said Joe. The trees really seem to be talking to one another, Father. That must be the wood I've heard about this afternoon, said Father. It has a strange name, children. What's it called, said Joe. It's called the Enchanted Wood, said their father. People don't go there if they can help it. It's funny to hear things like this nowadays, and I don't expect it's really true. I'm sure there's nothing strange about the wood, but just to be careful. Don't go too far into it in case you get lost. The children looked in excitement at one another. The Enchanted Wood. What a lovely name. Each child secretly thought the same thing. I shall go and explore the Enchanted Wood as soon as I ever can. Their father set them to work in the overgrown garden once they'd finished their meal. Joe had to pull up the tough thistles, and the girls had to weed the untidy vegetable bed. They spoke to one another in joyful voices. The Enchanted Wood! We knew there was something magical about it. I guess there were fairies there, said Franny. We'll do some more exploring as soon as we can, cried Beth. We'll find out what those whispering trees are saying. We'll know all the secrets of the wood before many weeks are past. And that night, at bedtime, all three stood at the window, looking out onto the dark, whispering wood. behind the cottage, thinking, what would they find in the enchanted wood? And we shall find out the next chapter, which is the first visit to the wood, another time.